What is going on, comic book gang? My name is Jiangxi, aka Year of the Collector, and this is One World Under Doom. Today, we're going over the events that took place in Fantastic Four number 32 by writer Ryan North, penciler Corey Smith, colorist Jesus Aburtov, letters by Joe Caramagna, and inks from Oren Jr. and Wayne Faucher. If you're new to the channel, this is just episode 13. But as some of you may already know, the One World Under Doom story is an event that has taken over the entire Marvel Universe. This issue is number 32 out of 71 when you count the main series alongside all the tie-ins. I'm pretty sure the number is still growing, so by the time I do the next episode, they might add more. But with all that being said, let's jump right into it. This is Fantastic Four number 32 from One World Under Doom, and it's titled The Fantastic One. The end of the last issue saw the Fantastic Four being erased from the timeline, all because they were trying to turn Ben Grimm back into the Thing. Long story short, they traveled to different universes to shower him with cosmic rays, but it didn't work. They eventually theorized that because they were from a different universe, the cosmic rays wouldn't work the same way they did in their original universe. So, without telling anyone, Ben set the Fantastic Car to travel to the past in their own universe to exactly the moment their past selves were traveling inside the Marvel One. Ben got showered in the cosmic rays and it worked, just like they predicted, but he took way too much in the process. The crew inside Marvel One didn't get enough rays, so when they returned home, they did not change into the Fantastic Four. With that particular detail changing in the past, the Fantastic Four as we know them stopped from existing. Here's where issue 32 picks up. Sue Storm tried her best to protect everyone from the temporal wave, but it was way too much for her. This wasn't a fight against a powerful villain. This was time itself correcting the timeline based on a change. When it was over, Valeria woke up in a different world, in a different body, but because her mother's shield somewhat protected her during the temporal wave, her mind was preserved. That's how and why this entire event has been narrated by Valeria, because she's basically the only one that survived to tell this story. The first thing Valeria decided to do was to investigate whose body she's driving now, if you will. She deducted pretty fast that this world was pretty normal. She was in New York, so she figured her way to a public library. When she finally sat down and looked into her family, that's when she realized she was inside the body of this timeline's version of herself, the daughter of Reed Richards and Sue Storm. The big difference is that in this world, she is not called Valeria. Since Sue never had any powers, she never had any of those complications while giving birth to her daughter. So therefore, she never needed the help of Dr. Doom, and hence, there wasn't the need to allow Doom to name the child after the love of his life. Instead, she was named Mary after her grandmother. That's a big difference in this new timeline, and we're just getting started. Once Valeria figured out her home address, she went to talk to her parents. They were acting weird from the moment they opened the door, keeping those weird forced smiles for some reason. Valeria tried to explain everything and they just brushed her off. They said, "Don't worry, Franklin will fix it." Immediately, that's a hint that in this world, Franklin also has powers. But in addition, they didn't even bother to ask any follow-up questions to Valeria. They didn't even flinch when they heard the claims she was making about a different timeline or any of that. They tried closing the door on her and she wasn't having it. They repeated that Franklin was going to handle everything, but Valeria said that Franklin wasn't there, and that's when they looked at each other and told Valeria to avoid joking about Franklin in that manner. With her parents providing no help whatsoever, Valeria took a moment to do what she does best, analyze the data. So here's what she realized. In her original timeline, the Fantastic Four didn't just happen by accident. They were more of a necessity. And I'm not talking about how Dan Slott retconned their origins, and this is a quick parenthesis here, but before the 2018 series by Dan Slott, the Fantastic Four origins used to be that the Marvel One was showered in cosmic rays by chance, and that informed the character of Reed Richards in particular. Reed felt guilty because maybe he had made a miscalculation and that resulted in them flying into the cosmic rays by accident. But Dan Slott said nope. In volume 5 of his run, which is titled Point of Origin, it was revealed that those rays hit the Marvel One on purpose by the Overseer. This guy from far, far away basically saw in advance the Marvel One traveling, and he sent the cosmic rays towards them so they can be altered, change, influence, whatever you may call it. In any case, what Valeria meant by necessity is the fact that the world or even the universe would not exist without the Fantastic Four because of the amount of times they have saved it, or at least one member of the family was key to saving everything. In other words, they saved the universe so many times, they eventually became a necessity. So if this universe lacked the Fantastic Four, they must have had something or somebody to protect it from those threats. That's when this huge shadow blocked the skies, and as Valeria looked up, everything became clear. No, that is not Galactus, that is Franklin Richards, her brother. Besides the fact he looked like Galactus, the one thing I want you to notice is that big letter F he's wearing on his chest. The first appearance of Galactus, he was sporting a G on his chest. That was Jack Kirby's original design for the character. And throughout the years, the G kinda went away. Maybe because it was silly or childish to have this cosmic being wear a letter on his chest, or it just wasn't fashionable anymore. Why does it matter? I didn't see it at first, but all of this will become clear by the time this issue is over. So, lock in, trust me, it'll all make sense. You'll see that Valeria's hypothesis was correct. Something or someone had to replace the Fantastic Four, and that was Franklin. So the F is a signal for both Franklin and the lack of Fantastic Four. So immediately, there's a sort of confrontation between Franklin and Valeria. He noticed that his sister is not the same. And as we already established, this is Valeria from another world in Mary's body. And Franklin here seems to be all powerful. He noticed that there was something amiss. Before he could look into her mind and quote unquote fix it, something went down somewhere else. A terrorist attack somewhere in Europe. So he had to go over there and handle that first. Like, that is a clear sign that this Franklin watches over the entire world. It kind of like went over my head the first time I read this, but that's, clear right there. Something popped up in the other side of the world and he has to go solve it. Like, there's no other heroes in this earth. Before Valeria even had the chance to process what's going on, she got snatched by this world's Jean Grey. Lo and behold, there's an underground resistance in this world, and Jean Grey is part of it. So Jean had read Valeria's mind and realized this was not Mary Richards, or at least not the Mary Richards of this world. That's why she trusted Valeria with the following secret. She took Valeria with her to a place where Franklin could not see them, in this secret hideout where Namor was waiting for them. Yeah, Namor was also part of the resistance in this world, and the whole terrorist attack that went down that took Franklin's attention was 100% set up by them, because they wanted to distract Franklin so they could get a hold of Valeria and figure out what's going on. In this world, Jean Grey and Namor are married, and he was the former prince of the kingdom of Atlantis. Like, keyword there is former, right? So clearly, another example of how much things are different in this world. The short story of all this is that Jean was banking on the hope that Valeria will be smart enough to figure out a way to handle Franklin and put a stop to his rule over this world. They didn't have a lot of time for introductions and pleasantries because it takes everything they have to conceal this place, and all of them from Franklin. So the first thing was to know everything Valeria knew about her brother, right? Because the Franklin Richards of this world is the Devourer of Souls, kind of like a wordplay on Galactus, the Devourer of Worlds. So Valeria goes quickly through everything, where she comes from, who she is, and who her brother was supposed to be in the world. Also, she filled in the gaps as to how Franklin managed to travel to this universe with his powers. When they were being consumed by that temporal wave, the bubble that was protecting Franklin dissolved and he moved into this timeline. But he still had those powers. Very much a comic explanation, right? Don't think about it too much. In return, they explained to Valeria what happened in this world. So according to Jean and Namor, when Franklin was born, he was basically the only protection that this world had against Galactus. Because remember, the Fantastic Four did not have their powers. So basically, when he was a baby, his parents told baby Franklin, hey, look, this guy's bad. He wants to hurt us. Franklin, make him go away. Apparently, at some point, they figured out that he had these incredible powers. So they used him as a baby to get rid of Galactus. And of course he did. He was obeying his parents. But in turn, what happened was very irresponsible because Reed and Sue abused Franklin's powers. Every single time there was a problem, they would grab Franklin and point him towards the problem. And he would just make it go away by either disappearing those people or brainwashing them to the point where he lobotomized them. Eventually, Franklin started to quote unquote correct the personalities of anyone he saw behave badly. So they be good or happy. A black and white easy answer from bad to good. Basically a child's perspective of the world to solve problems. Eventually, he ended up taking the likeness of Galactus because that was the image of the biggest and baddest thing he had ever seen. And it left an impression on him. So to Franklin, that was the image of power. And because there was nobody that could face him or oppose him, there was not a problem he could not solve by wiping the minds of people, villains, heroes, friends. It didn't matter. He never lost. Nobody ever managed to oppose him to the point where they could stop him. He was never told no, so he never had to grow up. Franklin always stayed in the mindset of a child. And this is quite the drastic depiction of the character of Franklin Richards, right? Because in the mainline Marvel Universe, or Earth 616, Franklin likes to help people because he knows he has these godlike powers. He wouldn't allow others to carry the weight of the world on their shoulders when he can help, right? But here in this timeline, it was different. His parents just put the weight of the world on him and they never stopped. They never allow him time or space to mature, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, etc. So that's why you have this giant Franklin Richards looking like Galactus with this black and white perspective of the world, wiping the mind of anybody that doesn't act according to his views. So, of course, this begs the question, why his parents never did anything about it? According to Namor and Jean Grey, every time his parents became angry or aggravated or upset, they got their minds wiped by their son. That's why they had that reaction when Valeria pressed them. When she said that Franklin wasn't there, their reaction was like, hey, get out of here. And they closed the door on her. What was the plan now? Time travel, of course. It's a comic book. But traveling physically was not an option because they wouldn't be able to engineer a whole time travel machine without Franklin noticing. Also, this world is blocked from time travel. Franklin made sure of it, probably because at one point somebody already tried it. But what about pushing information through time instead of people? Like sending Valeria's mind back in time to prevent this timeline from happening. Valeria's assessment was that Franklin was a juvenile, so in the event they could get caught by Franklin, he wouldn't know what they were sending back in time, and hopefully they slip past his senses. So they get to work. They put together this device with whatever scraps they could find. They went over the plan over and over, working out the kinks. Finally, they put the plan into action. And to everyone's surprise, Franklin found them immediately after they turned the device on. Before any of them could do anything, Franklin started to erase their minds. The first one to go down was Namor. Then he went after Jean Grey. And by the time Valeria was able to do anything, Franklin already had a hold of her mind. This blank space that we see in this page is where they have this conversation between just the two of them. Valeria also asked about Jean because she felt her presence withered while she talked to Franklin. She said, "Hey, you're killing her." And Franklin said, "No, I'm helping her. She's going to be nice now." Again, reinforcing what we discussed before about Franklin being a child. As Franklin was erasing Jean's mind and Valeria's too, she got him caught up with what happened so far. In return, Franklin was telling Valeria that her plan was not going to work because there wasn't enough of her mind left to be sent back in time. So Valeria said she had asked Jean Grey, "How do you beat a god?" And Jean responded that you can. I mean, how could you? They couldn't fight somebody with godlike powers like that. And Valeria understood that she wasn't going to beat Franklin, but she could make sure he didn't win either. The real plan was not to send Valeria's entire mind or consciousness back in time. They were never going to have enough time for that. The real plan was to send back just 4 words. That amount of information could be processed quickly through the device. All she needed was mere seconds. So, by the time Franklin realized what the real plan was, it was too late. He was already devolving from his Galactus form back into what he should look like in this world, a child. The amazing part of this was Valeria's compassion and kindness for this version of her brother. Because although he was doing terrible, horrible, unethical, morally wrong things, she let him know that it wasn't his fault, that he deserved better. In the end, Franklin pleaded for Valeria to stop killing him. She was like, "Yes, you're dying, but as long as I have left, I can live with that." Because this was no way for anyone to live. She was at peace as the temporal wave came back for her. So we go back to that moment in the previous issue, right when Valeria figured out what Ben was thinking. Like I said in the previous episode, Valeria knew what Ben was going to do, but because she felt sorry for Ben, she let it slide. She let it happen. But back in that moment, Valeria received the 4-word message from the future timeline and immediately turned around and yelled at Ben to stop. What were the 4 words? It's not stated, but it was enough for Valeria to know that she shouldn't let Ben go through with it. They didn't go to the past, the plan worked, and immediately Valeria turned around and said, "I think I just figured out how to fix everything." It's crazy and it should be impossible, but it's not. And I'm going to need all of you to hear me out. And with that, issue 32 concluded. This issue served as a cautionary tale for parents like myself. When you raise children, handling your power of authority with care and responsibility is of the utmost importance. If you're too strict, you might raise a rebel. If you're too relaxed, you might raise a slacker. But if you abuse your child's gifts for your own self-interest, instead of honing and nurturing them for the child's own benefit, not only are you taking advantage of your own child, but you could also rob them of the joy of growing up into their own person with their own agency. Franklin here is the best case study for immature and unchecked power. He was taught to use powers to solve problems for others without learning any critical thinking skills. Children's minds are so frail and fragile that anything can cause a lasting impression. Franklin was robbed of his humanity the moment his parents resorted to using him to save them. My final thoughts on this arc is that we should not forget this entire time traveling ordeal was originally the fault of Dr. Doom. By turning Ben back into a human, he effectively took the Fantastic Four off the playing board. The efforts to return Ben to form set them into this whole path where they went from the Fantastic Four to the Fantastic 3 to the Fantastic 2 to the Fantastic 1, and next in the final issue of this run, the Fantastic Zero. So the next issue is basically the conclusion of this entire run. And if I had to guess here, the Fantastic Four are gonna do something crazy that is going to erase them or reset them, or some other comic book shenanigans to explain how the new run it's gonna start. Maybe they're not getting rebooted or reset because Marvel doesn't do that kind of thing typically, but I do know the next and maybe last Fantastic Four issue that ties into the One World Under Doom event is issue 3 from the next series, according to solicitations. So whatever happens to the Fantastic Four at the conclusion of this series by Ryan North is not gonna be the end of their conflict or their participation in the One World Under Doom event. That's pretty cool. I don't think I have ever seen that, where a run ends during the middle of an event, only for those characters to get a new run started and also be involved in the same event. I don't think I ever seen that before, like I said. Not that is a groundbreaking idea, but at least it's new to me. This is where we're gonna cut off the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section about the Fantastic Four. Are you excited about the new run? Are you looking forward to the movie? Tell me all about it. And with that being said, my name is Jean C, aka Year of the Collector. Thank you for watching. Have a blessed day. And remember to read more comics.